Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my September 2024 reading wrap-up video. I'm thinking this is probably going to be a pretty short and sweet video. A lot of the reading I did in September was for the BookTube Prize, and I already have my BookTube Prize, ranking and review video up, which I'll link to down below. And I only read 3 other books in September beyond the BookTube Prize. And I'm also filming at the time of day when hopefully I only have a limited time before the sun is going to overtake me over here. So there's that as well. And in general, I have to admit, of this non-BookTube Prize reading, it was far from my favorite reading month. I struggled a little bit, and I think part of it was, I was distracted by other things, so I wasn't reading as much. But also, of these 3 books, none of them really, took my fancy to a huge degree. In fact, 2 of them in particular were more meh. So, it's a little bit of a disappointment, but, now we're certainly into a new month. Hopefully things will, find a better keel this month. We'll see. But here is what I've read and some brief thoughts about them. I read Of Women and Salt by Gabriela Garcia for my page 112 tag pick. It's a very slight little novel. It's a Latinx heritage novel, I guess appropriate for the month as well. But I did not really connect very well with this one. There was a disjointed nature, sort of interconnected short story feel to it. Also, there's construction going on outside. Another reason maybe to be a little quicker. Our main character is Jeanette. We see her mostly through, I guess, the first few decades of the 21st century. She's the daughter of a Cuban immigrant. She is suffering from addiction abuse. She also has a brief encounter with a young girl whose mother had been taken away by ICE before the young girl herself is taken away. And then we follow the young girl and her mother a little bit and their travails in Mexico. And then also the very first chapter is going back in time to mid 19th century Cuba to follow this ancestor of Jeanette, and a little bit we see in some later chapters the impact that this woman might have had on her family. But ultimately it was just very disjointed, and I just felt like there was no through line of a story. And I couldn't fully connect with the characters, and I especially feel like maybe the Mexican characters were just a little bit superfluous, which, it's ironic, and I do think, there was some good writing in here. And I read from one of my page 112 tag that I read was one of the Mexican chapters, and I was intrigued by it, and that on a base level the writing could be good, but I feel like ultimately, like the entirety of that chapter or the entirety of the book didn't give me enough to really connect to the characters and the situations. The next book I read is LOKA by S.B. Divya, which is one of my anticipated 2024 sci-fi releases. Got it right under the belt in sci-fi September, as it were. And this is definitely my favorite of the 3 reads of this video. And this is a sequel, but to explain what I can, this is a far future Earth, post-anthropocene age, and humans have created, I guess, well, it's more like a hybrid sort of technological human creature that's called alloys, and the alloys have more or less taken over for human society, like our greed and materialism, destroyed so much of this planet and then Mars that it was basically either give up all reins to our future or, go completely extinct, I guess. And so, we're on Earth and there's a lot fewer people on Earth now, and they largely just live sort of quiet lives without much personal ambition. Like, I guess they're all sort of interconnected globally. The alloys do like a lot of transit stuff if they need to or something, or there's, advanced medicine that's unharmful and that sort of thing to the Earth. But humans don't do a whole bunch on their own. And this was sort of the backdrop of the first novel, which I guess was speaking a little about redemption with the character Jayanthi. who thought, well, maybe we could try again on this newly formed planet Meru and do things right this time. And there's the question of the alloys maybe being a little too biased about the past and, like, not giving a second chance or that sort of thing. And Jayanthi ends up teaming up with a certain alloy who actually acts also as a pilot, which is a spaceship, and they fall in love and there's a relationship and they have a child together. And this book follows that child who, I guess in the theme of these books perhaps, is like, there's societal expectations and maybe slightly expectations of parents. Well, in this one in particular, there's parental expectations. That Jayanthi wants her daughter Akshaya to, live with her on Meru, and she's sort of been engineered to do well on Meru, and Akshaya is rebelling against that, and she actually wants to return to Earth, and where she hadn't been before. And she strikes a bargain with her mother that she could be allowed to return to Earth if she completes what's called the Anthro Challenge, which is to basically circumnavigate the Earth, sort of Jules Verne style, but only using technology that was available during the Anthropocene age, but, earlier Anthropocene age, not like, airplanes and I guess things that pollute, because those things, aren't cool anymore. And you could use an alloy to get around, but, you can't do that in the Anthropocene Challenge. And so this follows her and her friend as they go through this challenge, which takes the better part of a year. And also LOKA refers to areas of Earth that the alloys have made safe for human habitation versus out of bounds, which sometimes the weather can be more ravaging and that sort of thing. And also out of bounds is where the humans who do have like this, over ambitious streak to them might live if they aren't going to follow the rules of LOKA. And so it's a Bildungsroman for Akshaya as she discovers, where she was right and where she was wrong about, how human beings, as a society feel and interact and, what their ambitions are or aren't. She has a lot more pushback from a lot of humans about the Anthro Challenge because of how dangerous it is and how, overly ambitious and to what purpose it is. And also, she herself is semi-hybrid because of her conditioning, and she has some alloy features to her. And it's also just about her coming to terms with her mother, and I guess just figuring out that she and her mother, they have some common ground. And I felt like the chapters that follow Akshaya were pretty decent. The chapters that went into other characters were rather exposition heavy for me, and in general, I do feel like, there's a lot of, like, interesting world building going on, but I do think some of the character relationship stuff kind of suffered for me, particularly with this one person who Akshaya, like, falls for, and they're, like, about to start a romance, but it just never fully came together for me. Like, I never, fell for those characters together myself. I mean, her relationship with her friend that traveled with her was much more, poignant and fleshed out. And also, the stuff with her mother was somewhat intriguing, if perhaps a little of, I don't know, simplified in a way. It felt like more of the YA understanding of mothers and daughters, perhaps. Which might mean that this book could have a wider audience. I thought it was interesting, I guess, what it's ultimately saying about what Akshaya has to discover about herself and about how society works and how she fits in with society or how she doesn't. And yeah, some interesting, world-building conundrums about what the post-Anthropocene age might look like. And the third and final book I read is Dark Orbit by Carolyn Ives Gilman, another, very appropriate for Sci-Fi September book, which I chose in my Q3 BookTube Spin TBR game. And this one, we are, I guess, also in the far future. This is part of a series of standalone books by Gilman called the 20 Planets books, which imagine humanity living on, I guess, 20 planets elsewhere in the far future, where we have some pretty crazy tech, like how human beings can kind of be light beamed from place to place, which, I don't know, for me that didn't necessarily factor into the story too much. I guess it provided some plot complications later on when, maybe they couldn't get back home. But the crux of the story is that these two women, Sarah Caldicott and Thora Lassiter, are part of this team that are exploring a new planet where maybe they could, harvest it for resources, or maybe they could, colonize it for habitation. There's a definite, corporate feel that's, drawn over this novel. It's not like overtly, political with a message about, how evil corporations are, but I feel like that part, I guess I would say, I think Gilman did pretty well, where we could see how, sort of corporate concerns could clash with other human concerns without being, overbearingly moralistic about it. Sarah's technically an exoanthologist. That's her, scientific role, but she's also kind of there to keep an eye on Thora Lassiter, sort of as a political favor to an old mentor, Thora's, I guess, relative. And I don't know if this came up in another book or not, but it's an intriguing backstory, I guess, where Thora was on a certain planet where the humans of that planet were part of this sort of patriarchal sexist society, and it seems like she had a religious experience as we go through the book. Like, you get into how she might have been possessed by a goddess, that sort of thing. And so, there's a little bit of science, well, more science fantasy in here as well. In the actual book here, she is on the planet when she disappears. She probably stumbles into an underground city, basically. Nobody knew that this planet was inhabited by human beings that I guess have lost contact with the rest of humanity. But it's what is true. There's underground sort of cities in complete darkness, and in fact the humans have lost the ability of their eyes. And so, they get around by, I think, understanding patterns by feet and hands and that sort of thing. And Thora's doing these audio diaries as she acclimates herself to the world. And there's another bigger thing going on with dark matter in and around this world, and that's how they're able to travel. And that gets into some, I guess, spiritual questions as well. And this stuff, I guess in a way there was some interesting elements. I don't know. I think when it comes to sci-fi and dark matter, I need YA fiction for that, apparently. Like How a Wrinkle in Time and His Dark Materials cover it. I don't know. Because I feel like, I don't know, there were some interesting societal questions being asked on the ship and on the planet, but none of the characters fully came alive to me. And this is sort of Ursula K. Le Guin fiction. It's blurbed by her even, and I feel like I struggle with some of these types of fiction more than I want to, because I feel like ultimately they're asking the sociological questions that interest me, but sometimes you lose the actual character believability and authenticity. Like, they're just not developed enough. And like Sarah's like sort of this, badass on top of it person, which, speaks to some readers, but not really to me. It's, I don't know, she was just a little too one note for me. And Thora had potential, but I don't think the audio diary first person narrative necessarily helped with, creating a full story around her. And of course, like most like epistolary stuff, it doesn't read like how people would actually write a diary. It reads like, first person narrative, but I don't know, it didn't work for me, and like creating a larger sense of the world and her place in it. I don't know, I struggled. This was not my reading month. I thought, there was some really interesting ideas that didn't ultimately come together for me. And that's basically where I will leave it. I will also link to my September literary newsletter down below, where I have snippets of my Goodreads reviews for these books. I also have literary news that caught my fancy, a book pick, a book quote, which actually comes from the BookTube Prize this month. But we are now halfway through, or more than halfway through October, and I have been doing some other reading, so I hope to be back on this channel imminently to do my first Am Reading video of the last couple of months. In fact, I hadn't been doing it, but I'm excited to try to get back to it a few times before November in NaNoWriMo, and I'll be talking about what I'm reading and continuing to also go through some literary magazine short stories, so stay tuned for that. And I hope you are all also enjoying your reading and don't have too many duds, hopefully smooth sailing for the most part. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.